Hello YouTube, Blade Brothers here, coming to you with another video, another kukri specifically, sort of continuation. This is actually a kukri I got for my son to be used as a sort of outdoor survival style knife. This is the Condor K-Tac Kukri. So just kind of get here. You can kind of zoom in here. So it's a Condor. See here's branded. And on the other side you can see it says K-Tac Kukri. Okay. So it's a more modern take on a kukri. It's built to be more of a utility blade. But it definitely can still be used as a combative self-defense weapon if you need to. Just for a basis of comparison, bringing back the traditional kukri I have here, and kind of as a point of reference, do a little comparison. So it is notably smaller. The overall length of this is 14.5 inches with a blade length of about 10 inches, so slightly smaller. The recurve is more pronounced, as you can see, compared to my traditional kukri. Full tang construction, as you can see here. So it's throughout all the way to the end. And blade thickness wise, you can see, while not as thick as my traditional kukri, still notable. It has a blade thickness of about 0.236 inches. So definitely can get the job done in terms of like use as a machete or chopping down branches and whatnot. So quite comfortable, has a micarta grips. This one is in sort of a greenish color. Let's see if I can zoom in. You can see the micarta grips. So it gets more tacky if your hands are like wet, so good grip. There's 3 holes here, so you can attach for like a lanyard and whatnot to get a better grip, or if you need to like just keep a lanyard here so that you can keep track of it. It feels real good in the hand, has a good balance. The curvature being more pronounced, so it definitely lends to more of a chopping and hacking capability, and I think this right here would be considered the sweet spot. It's made with 1075 carbon steel, so relatively high carbon steel, very tough. 1070 is a little bit tougher. 1075 is a little bit tougher than, say, like 1095, which you find in a lot of knives. But edge retention might be a little bit weaker than the, say, 1095. But actually, for a field knife, you want it to be relatively tough, especially for a kukri type design. So it's a nice balance. It has a sort of a bead blast type finish, so not quite satin. And it's not a mirror polish, as you can see. It's not quite mirror. See, you can't really see my reflection on my hand here. So it's a nice combination, I think, because you know, relatively easy to maintain. Won't get scuffed up too much. And then it still has the flare at the end, because these blades tend to, when you're actually doing a chopping motion, it tends to drive forward. So keeps the blade in your hand. Another more modern take is it has a sort of Kydex sheath with a lot of rings here for different types of attachments. It comes itself with a sort of dangler. So, and these are snaps, so you don't have to take off your belt. You can just attach it to your belt. Okay, so you can just directly attach it to your belt, and it dangles off the side. Some people like it, some people don't. I tend to prefer a dangler style, especially for a kukri like this. And you can see here it's molded to fit. So even with the retentions like strap here, not there, not snapped on, it doesn't fall out. Yet actually deploying it is relatively straightforward. Just kind of draw it out a little bit and you can pull back a little bit and ready to do business. So it is a smaller, relatively lighter blade than the traditional kukri, which is exactly one of the reasons why I got it for my son as a sort of a survival / utility knife for his use. His relatively, just level of skill with the blade isn't quite there yet, so a lighter blade won't fatigue as much if you're doing a lot of chopping motions and whatnot, and overall just more fitting for him. I really like it. I mean, it's got a full tang, and it has a full plate here for the butt of the handle, so you can actually use it for hammering and like mashing purposes. So you can drive a nail with it, or if you need to like pound on some like wood twigs to create some kindling and things like that, this would actually function quite well compared to a traditional kukri. A traditional kukri is still full tang, except it's usually sort of like not a full this portion all the way down into the tang. It's usually what's called like a rat tail design. It's maybe that wide, comes down to the, and then you can see here it's welded and pounded and then kind of welded in place into the brass piece. So not quite as good in terms of a pounding action with the butt of the handle. I mean, arguably you could like try to do some pounding considering the overall thickness of this, but driving a nail or whatnot wouldn't work very well. So to all its own. I mean, arguably you can probably find like a rock or something, but and this is definitely, the traditional kukri is more heavy on the front, so it might be harder to control, but actually the action of chopping would be easier with the traditional kukri. While the K-Tac Kukri, because there's not as much weight at the tip, well, overall, because you can see the thickness of the blade itself is not as thick as the traditional kukri. But you can see here, so when I'm just doing a simple motion like this, to kind of like a wrist flick like that, it doesn't drive the blade with a lot of force as I would with the traditional kukri, but the benefit of it is you still have more control. It's a lot more easier to control because, if you don't want to overextend or hit something you inadvertently don't want to be chopping, I can stop and control this. Like I'm swinging like this, and I can stop like before I hit the sheath. While I can still do it with the traditional kukri, it is definitely harder. There's more force coming through, and just the overall weight of this is driving it forward. So yeah, so from a function of just chopping, I think this would be more powerful as a chopping blade, but to control it would be requires a little bit more experience and a little bit more strength. So it might actually, in the long run, cause you a little bit more fatigue if you need to be controlled. But if you're just for like splitting wood, as an example, then the traditional kukri will definitely do a better job compared to the K-Tac Kukri, where if you need to do controlled cuts, this would definitely do better, because it's not as heavy in the overall blade, so you have a lot more control over the blade, how you actually drive with it. Yeah. It came relatively sharp, not hair popping sharp. I did test it on some of the cardboard box that it was shipped in, but it isn't like paper shaving or paper cutting, you know, or even shaving quality sharp. Yeah, it's not to that degree. You can kind of get a sense of it. Yeah, it's not. I mean, there's certain. Yeah, see, it's not razor sharp. Not a big deal though. I mean, you can definitely. The benefit of like a 1075 or 1070 type of blade is it's relatively easy to sharpen. You could sharpen this with, you know, some stone, even ceramic. So if you have like a bottom of like a dish or something that you could use, you know, you can probably bring this to a better edge. Or better yet, if you have like something like diamond grit sharpening stone, whatnot, you can definitely bring it to a much better edge. It's not built to be super sharp. I mean, it's really more of a. It should be as sharp as an axe should be, I guess, is really what it comes down to. But it feels great in the hand. I really like the micarta grip of this. You know, it feels, you know, substantial, and there's a little bit of contouring, so it's a little bit thicker right there, a little bit thinner in these areas, so it contours in your hand quite well. So overall, not a bad type of blade, and I've primarily got this for my son, so it serves its purpose. Okay, and the sheath design is quite good. And the Kydex is really good in the sense that sometimes the certain sheaves with the kukri, because of the blade shape, you do run a risk if your hand is like holding in the higher areas and whatnot. It might not be very safe. You could risk cutting yourself, especially depending on how sharp the edge is. But in this case, it's like quite easy to sheath and unsheath. You just gotta pop it to, you know, you can use your thumb here to give it a little bit of a boost, and then once it pops out, it slides right out quite well. Yet it is, you know, it has good retention, being a molded sheath. So that's definitely a plus for, especially for, you know, if it's for your, you know, my son. And arguably, if you don't like the dangler design, you could potentially, there's aftermarket accessories where you can get this in the form of like a clip, or you could potentially even get like latch D-rings for doing sort of like a over-the-shoulder type of carry. So it really is up to your preference. Some prefer to, like, you could probably get a belt ring style, a wide, maybe double attachment type right there, and then do sort of a scout's carry, which is behind your back. So there are a lot of options, and that's the benefit of like having Kydex. Usually there's different accessories. You can get like tech lock and things like that. So that's definitely a plus, the modern take on it, versus say like a traditional kukri really it's built with just a belt loop. So any other carry method you want for this is fairly limited. So, all right, the Condor K-Tac Kukri. Quite nice. Hope you like this video. Thank you always for your continued support. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Blade Brothers, signing off.